We often think of evil as something external, something that exists far away from us. But what if the real monsters are not out there in the world, but within us? Today, we'll explore how even good-hearted individuals can be led down a path of cruelty and malice, and what we can do to prevent it. The idea that humans are capable of immense cruelty is not new. Throughout history, we've seen moments of unimaginable horror, not just committed by tyrants or dictators, but by ordinary people. William Golding, in his novel The Lord of the Flies, emphasized this with his famous line, "The true monsters are not in nature, but in the minds of men." This statement touches on a disturbing reality. Humans are not naturally inclined toward kindness or cruelty. Both potentialities exist within us. Under the right conditions, even those who consider themselves good can become capable of harmful actions. C.S. Lewis, in his classic work, The Screw-Tape Letters, explores this dynamic by highlighting how everyday vices and distractions can slowly turn an individual away from virtue and toward malice. John Stuart Mill once said, "Bad men need nothing more to accomplish their ends than that good men should look on and do nothing." This quote encapsulates a powerful truth. While few people actively commit atrocities, many more enable them through their inaction. Human nature has a tendency toward moral passivity. When faced with difficult ethical choices, we often avoid responsibility by turning a blind eye. Think about times when great injustices have occurred, both historically and in the present day. Often, atrocities are carried out by a small group of perpetrators, but their success is made possible by the inaction of the majority. Whether it's through fear, apathy, or convenience, we frequently choose to remain silent or look away, allowing evil to flourish in the absence of resistance. Leo Tolstoy argued that most people have a general sense of right and wrong, but when we're confronted with complex ethical situations, we tend to ignore our principles in favor of what seems immediately practical. We convince ourselves that our small actions, or lack thereof, won't make a difference in the grand scheme of things. This psychological pattern, according to Sigmund Freud, is rooted in our subconscious desire to avoid discomfort. When we witness cruelty or injustice, standing up to it requires effort, and our minds naturally steer us toward the path of least resistance, doing nothing. Over time, this inaction dulls our sense of moral responsibility, making it easier to turn a blind eye. One of the most insightful explorations of how good people become bad is C.S. Lewis's The Screw-Tape Letters. In this work, Lewis outlines how subtle, seemingly insignificant actions can lead individuals down a path of moral decay. The demonic figure, Screw-Tape, advises his apprentice Wormwood to steer their victim not by grand gestures of evil, but by encouraging distractions and small lapses in virtue. Screw-Tape suggests that one of the most effective ways to corrupt a human soul is to convince them that ethical concerns are irrelevant to their daily life. Focus on the practical, Screw-Tape advises. He encourages his victim to become so consumed by trivial matters, what to eat, daily errands, social engagements, that they no longer contemplate what is truly right or wrong. This strategy taps into a common weakness in human nature. We often confuse practicality with morality. Instead of making decisions based on ethical principles, we make them based on convenience or social pressure. Over time, this disconnection between our principles and our actions leads us to a place where we are no longer guided by our values, but by what seems immediately useful. Another important aspect of C.S. Lewis's work is the emphasis on social influence. Humans are social creatures, and we are deeply affected by the opinions and actions of those around us. Screwtape advises Wormwood to introduce the victim to a group of morally ambiguous or outright corrupt individuals. The desire to fit in with this new social circle gradually erodes the victim's ethical convictions. In the modern world, this phenomenon is reflected in how social groups and environments shape our behavior. We often look to others to determine what is acceptable, and when surrounded by individuals who display cruelty or disregard for moral values, we begin to adopt similar behaviors. This idea is also supported by the works of Albert Camus, who explored how societal pressures and absurdity can lead individuals to abandon their personal morals. In The Stranger, Camus depicts a character who becomes detached from traditional moral values, acting with indifference to the suffering of others. This detachment reflects a larger truth. When we fail to hold ourselves accountable to our values, we become more susceptible to acts of cruelty. One of the most dangerous traps in the descent into cruelty is the feeling of moral superiority. Carl Jung famously discussed the idea that the potential for good and evil exists within all of us. He argued that those who fail to acknowledge their darker side, their shadow, are more likely to project it onto others, judging them harshly while overlooking their own moral failings. This idea aligns with C.S. Lewis's portrayal of hypocrisy. In the Screwtape Letters, the victim is encouraged to maintain a public persona of goodness while privately engaging in unethical behavior. This dual personality allows the individual to believe they are still a good person, even as their actions become increasingly cruel. We see this in everyday life when people justify their harmful actions by convincing themselves they are acting for the greater good. For example, someone may act cruelly toward another person, believing they are doing so to protect their own interests or the interests of a larger cause. This self-justification leads to moral blindness, where the individual no longer recognizes the harm they are causing. In the Screwtape Letters, Lewis points out how humans use rationalization to justify their moral failings. Screwtape advises his apprentice to ensure that the victim never confronts their true motivations. Instead, they should be encouraged to rationalize their actions by imagining future acts of goodness that they will one day perform. These fantasies create a sense of moral superiority without requiring any real change in behavior. This type of rationalization is incredibly common. Many of us excuse our small daily cruelties, being rude to a stranger, ignoring someone in need, by telling ourselves that we are generally good people. We imagine future scenarios where we will act with great virtue, but in reality, these fantasies serve to ease our conscience in the present without prompting us to change our behavior. This insight connects to Freud's idea of the ego and its ability to deceive us. Freud argued that the ego creates elaborate defenses to protect itself from guilt or discomfort. One of these defenses is rationalization, where we invent justifications for our harmful behavior, allowing us to maintain a positive self-image. In his work, Lewis emphasizes that moral corruption is not the result of one grand decision, but of a series of small, seemingly insignificant choices. Over time, these small cruelties accumulate, gradually eroding an individual's sense of right and wrong. This idea is reflected in the famous saying, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." Often, people believe they are doing the right thing, or they convince themselves that their small moral lapses are inconsequential. But over time, these small lapses add up, leading them further and further from their original ethical principles. In many ways, this slow descent into cruelty is more dangerous than a sudden turn to evil, because it happens so gradually that the individual may not even notice it. By the time they realize the extent of their moral decay, they may feel it is too late to change course. In today's world, the influence of social media has amplified the effect of social circles on moral decision-making. The need to conform, to gain approval, and to be seen in a positive light by peers can drive individuals to compromise their values. This aligns with C.S. Lewis's warning about the power of social influence. On platforms like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, people are constantly exposed to the values and behaviors of others. The drive for likes, followers, and attention can push individuals to act in ways that are inconsistent with their true nature. Whether it's engaging in online bullying, spreading false information, or participating in harmful trends, the pressure to conform to the behavior of the online community is strong. So, how do we prevent ourselves from falling into the traps of moral corruption? How can we ensure that we remain true to our principles, even in the face of societal pressures and personal weaknesses? C.S. Lewis offers a solution: self-awareness and humility. The first step in preventing moral decay is recognizing that none of us are immune to it. We must be willing to confront our darker impulses and acknowledge our capacity for cruelty. Only by recognizing our potential for harm can we take steps to prevent it. Another key is to surround ourselves with individuals who hold us accountable to our values. As we've seen, social influence plays a major role in shaping our behavior. By surrounding ourselves with people who share our ethical principles and who encourage us to act in alignment with those principles, we can prevent ourselves from being led astray. At the end of the day, the line between good and evil runs through the heart of every person. We all have the capacity for both kindness and cruelty. But by staying aware of our actions, questioning our motivations, and surrounding ourselves with positive influences, we can ensure that we remain on the path of goodness. If this resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's continue exploring the depths of the human psyche together.